Okay, so I think we can start now.
Yes, thank you. So I just want to say thank you all for showing up, to all of our returning faces. It's so great to see all of you, and to all of those new attendees who are joining us. Thank you so much. So to COVID-19's intersectional impact on women and girls worldwide webinar series. This webinar series is all about presenting commonalities in our COVID-19 experiences while highlighting how intersecting factors such as race, religion, culture, ethnicity, status, gender can all exacerbate the pandemic's devastation. So we are so excited to be here with Girl Up Politicas, UANL. I think I said that all right, but accents definitely butchered it. And we're so excited to hear from them. Just some kind of housekeeping rules before we continue, and all of this will be sent out in the chat. The lovely Marina Martinez is here per usual. Message her if you have any questions or issues with technology. So just to go over some housekeeping rules. So Girl Up will not tolerate any and all forms of hate, discrimination, or microaggressions. If you are engaging in this event in an inappropriate manner, then you will be kicked out of the event. Please mute yourself on arrival and remain muted. If you would like to speak and unmute yourself, please privately message Marina or myself. We want to hear from you. So this is an interactive discussion. Use the chat feature to engage with our panelists and to engage with each other. Ask questions and share your experiences throughout the session. If there's something that resonates with you and you have a story to tell, go ahead and tell it. So a reminder, this event is recorded. Please feel free to show your lovely face if you feel comfortable doing so. And as always, please show the moderator, speaker, and translators your utmost compassion and patience. So Jenny from Girl Up Buop will be doing Spanish live Spanish translations, and you can get the link for that in the group chat. Just to let you know, this webinar series continues. We have another event on the 18th of August on the COVID-19 and female genital mutilation. So if you are excited to hear what that's about and unpack that very complex and multifaceted topic, go to our website, which will be in the chat, and we will see you soon. I'm gonna leave it up to the girls from Girl Up Politicas. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Shira, for first of all inviting us to this incredible webinar. And well, today we're going to be talking about many vulnerabilities, that women live in Latin America and how this has deepened with the arrival of the COVID-19 pandemic. So if we go to the next slide. So who are we? So we are Girl Up Politicas UANL. This is a club that is in Monterrey, Nuevo León, in the north of Mexico. This club is led by 5 girls: me, Anna, Leslie, Isis, Azalia, and Irlanda. You're going to meet them in a while. So basically, Girl Up Politicas UANL, what we do is we try to educate our community about topics that are important to talk about, such as gender topics, violence, and politics. So yes, we have been known nationally and internationally, and we are really happy to be part of this community with our 100 members. And so I think now I'm gonna start talking off the top. Sorry. The safe space agreement. First of all, what Shira mentioned, Girl Up is a safe space for everybody. Let's try not to engage in an inappropriate manner, and if it is needed, we will remove people that are not being respectful from this event. And okay, so now I'm going to talk about violence against women before the pandemic started here in Latin America. So first of all, Latin America and the Caribbean, it is one of the most violent regions for women of the whole world. This is because of the rooted patriarchal culture that governs our daily actions, beliefs, and traditions in our society. And well, of course, our culture normalizes violence against women, and our culture also produces stereotypes and perpetuates discrimination towards women. So then we have this author her name is Migonia Yestas, and she mentions that in the next slide, she mentions that violence towards women starts since our home, our own houses here in Latin America. So here, women are taught to be submissive, while men are taught to be dominant. Migdonia she compares cycle of death, or well, she calls this a cycle of death. Because yes, let's remember there's a lot of abuses and violence, and the most dramatic expression of this violence towards women always ends up in femicide. So she mentions that this cycle and yes, she mentions that in this cycle it starts when fathers teach mothers and daughters to obey all men, and as, and that if they refuse to obey, there will be consequences. These consequences can be physical violence, psychological violence, and in most cases, sexual abuses. So then now this a little bit of the hard data that we live here in Latin America is that one of every three women in Latin America and the Caribbean, they have been suffering any type of violence. So once again, let's remember that violence can happen in a lot of areas. It can be domestic violence, psychological violence, workspace violence, patrimonial violence, economical violence, and so on. So here in Latin America, once again, one of every three women in Latin America have suffered any type of this violence. And then another hard data is that every 2 hours, a woman in Latin America gets killed. This, of course, means that in just one day, 12 women be killed. And in 2019, 3,800 women got killed. Now, it is important to point out that this number is a little bit blurry because, of course, our region has a lot of countries in it and has a lot of different laws and regulations. So maybe in Mexico, a femicide is defined, yes, defined as certain way. But in other countries, and this is the situation in some countries of American Latin, a femicide is only considered a femicide when it was done by the hands of the partner or the ex-partner of the victim. So yes, this number is considered to be even higher than what the data is showing us. And then in the next slide, we have this rate of femicides in Latin America. And as you can see, the numbers are really, really, really horrible, really scary. They are really, really high. And I think the most important thing of all of this is not just to not see these just as numbers, right? Because let's remember all these numbers, they were women. They were women such as us. They could be our aunt, they could be our cousin, they could be our sister, they could be ourselves. They were women that had expectations, that had hopes, that had dreams, and it was all taken away from there. So yes, I wanted to say that because I think it is really, really important to just not analyze this data and see it as numbers, but to understand that there was a life behind this number. And it was all taken away just because of hate towards women. So then in the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about the types of violence that the women of Latin America lives. Of course, I'm going to talk about this too because I think it goes a little bit more in hand with the topic. But there's a lot of types of violence that women live here in Latin America and the Caribbean. So domestic violence, and this number was really shocking for me. So between 2013 and 2018, domestic violence increased by 751, correct me if I say it incorrectly, percent here in Mexico. Here, so one of the problems here in our society, in our region, is that abuses and femicides, even though legislations are being made and laws are being reformed to protect women, femicides and abuses are increasing and even diversifying. So it is worrisome that these abuses, this violence, femicides are being normalized in our community, in our society, in our region. So also, why? One of the problems that we have here is that yes, abuses are increasing. Women are not reporting these abuses. They rather stay silent because of two things. And here we enter into the institutional violence, which is really, really, really important to talk about. First of all, once a woman gets, let's talk about rape. Once she decides to report this, when they are in the institution, in the public worker, they get re-victimized again. So we're talking about a pretty traumatic experience for this woman, and then she has to live this experience again because the public worker doesn't understand what is going on. So once they are in this, how do you say, space, trying to report it, they get asked, "Oh, but what did you do? What were you wearing? What were you doing late tonight? Did you give him like the idea that he could do that to you?" So she gets blamed all over and all over again. So we have this stigma from our public workers, the ones that are supposed to be helping us, and there's also this stigma from our society, from our friends, from our parents even. So it is really, really hard for these women to talk about this topic and to go and denounce it when they know they're not getting help. Because also, when we're talking about going and report these problems, sadly, and this is really terrifying, most of these reports, they end up in nothing. They, the, how do you say, the one that was accused will not go to jail, will not go to trial even. So it ends up in a really traumatic process for the victim. So this is why women are not deciding to go and report the abuses they are going through. And also another thing is that of course our public workers are not trained properly to see these cases with a gender perspective view. I wanted to talk about this case that is going on right now, and it happened like 2 or 3 days ago. This guy got murdered. His name was Jonathan, and it's a really hard topic. Of course, when we're talking about people getting murdered, it is always going to be hard. But I wanted to point out this case just to so we can get like a whole view or a clear view of how our authorities don't understand what is a femicide. So this Jonathan, he was gay. In our authorities, they say that because he likes boys, his case, his murder case, will be considered a femicide. So I think that just by listening to this, we can understand how our authorities don't even understand what is a femicide, or maybe they don't even care what it is. Also, like the last year, I think it was the governor of our state, Nuevo León, he made a joke, a terrible joke about femicide. He said in TV, he said, okay, everyone is talking about femicide, but why is no one talking about menticide? He said, joking, laughing. And it's just like, if our authorities, if our governors, if our public workers don't even take femicide seriously, don't even take abuses and violence towards women, how do we expect our society to understand what's the problem and how can we solve it? So this is basically how violence and abuses was towards women before the pandemic. Now, my friend Leslie, she will talk more. And I know this topic was really, really, how do we say, por encimita, like just touching a little bit the real problem because we can talk about this for days and days and days and days. If you're more curious about it, there are really good articles you can read about. It is really important to understand how violence is lived here in our region because it is happening right now, and it is true. This is our reality for most of women here in Latin America. So now my friends will talk more about how women in Latin America are living these violences in the pandemic.
Thank you so much, Anna. I am Leslie. I am one of the officers of Gobierno Políticas UANL, and I will continue this conversation leading on to when the pandemics actually arrived in Latin America. In Mexico, it came around the 8th of March, which is International Women's Day, which was honestly pretty crap because we were having a great momentum for the feminist movement, where all the eyes and all the attention were on all the women that went marching on the streets. We had a national strike. All over Latin America, there were manifestations of women, and then the pandemic strike. And of course, the conversation and the attention totally shifted. And I just want to point out, Salome just put a comment that they had a case where a 17-year-old boy was attacked with a machete because he was gay in Colombia. And I think the fight for equality, the fight for rights, the fight for justice, of course, spreads to all of the feminist movements and spreads to actually a lot of social movements throughout not only Latin America and the world. So I'm with you, Salome. And well, I will start talking about the lockdown. There were existing inequalities that we could have already seen with Anna. And right now, the pandemic situation, it's pretty complicated in Latin America. We are one of the main focuses of COVID-19 right now in the world. There are more cases right now. It's Brazil. It's followed by Mexico, then Peru. We follow with Ecuador, Chile, Argentina, and so on. Of course, the situation of the health services we have, it's not enough for the huge demand we are having, and the confinement measures are not adequate because we are a region where informality in the workspace is a reality. So with a lot of informality comes not the option to stay at home, because you cannot stay at home because you have to eat, because you have a family, because you have to keep gaining money so you can actually survive. Then you also get the attention, now focusing on the situation particularly of women, that are continuously affected within the public sphere and the private sphere. Because now you're asking women, well, either you go work and you gain money to survive, or you can stay at home with your aggressor and you could possibly get molested, you could possibly get violented, you could possibly get murdered. You and your children in case you're a mother. And of course, there are predominant cases why women are vulnerable in Latin America specifically. And they all have to do with several causes, which among them are the huge inequality we have within the socioeconomic sphere and our place in the society against men. There is this gender discrimination where women are supposed to be one thing, this, Anna already mentioned it, this submissive women, that it's always taking care of the family, that it's always at home, that it's perfect, while men is the one that goes out and does the work and brings the food to the table. Then there's also the social norms where if you actually get violented, which is a reality, well, why were you out? Why were you wearing that? What were you doing there? You wanted it, you know? And of course, there's this like masculinidad nociva, which is masculinity, wrongful masculinity. I don't know the exact translation, but it's generally machismo. So it's this machismo culture where toxic masculinity, thank you. So it's this machismo culture where it goes along the same, where men are supposed to be this strong figure, that it stems back to the colonial period, of course, of that it comes back to this time where men are supposed to be this figure of power, this figure of imposition within family and within the social sphere. And this culture, this macho, strong and powerful, doesn't allow women to occupy these spaces and to have any of this power, right? These are some of the causes within the social sphere why this is happening, but we have to understand that the pandemic comes and it aggravates this situation not only in the social sphere but also the economic sphere and the health sphere. So if you could go on to the next slide, Irlanda, please. And here we understand that it's an impact dimension, and this impact dimension is actually signed by UN Women in the Latin America region. They did a report where they address some of the different vulnerabilities we have and the impact the pandemic comes with. One of them is as frontliners of the medical response. I remember reading women take up around 70% of the frontliners with the medical response worldwide. We have to remember there is an overflow of the sanitary system. There is a total lack of protection for the workers, at least in Latin American region. There are protests in the street because they don't have enough to cover themselves so they can protect themselves from the virus. There is also a lot of physical and emotional tools. I think we have all seen videos, we have all seen testimonies of people that have to be in the hospitals and have to be taking care of the sick people. And that is horrible. You have to be separated from your family. You have to be isolated, and you have to be within this sphere of chaos, because it is chaos. And that takes a toll on you mentally and physically. And of course, how women are treated. In some places, well, the medical personnel, it's getting clapped. And in some countries here in Mexico, they are being thrown acid at because they want to attack them. And there's no surprise, it's predominantly women they attack too. Another dimension we can see, it's in the economic informal sector. As we already mentioned, a lot of the workers, a lot of the workforce here in Mexico works in the informal sector. Right now, there are 126 million working in this sector, 126 million women. And 16 million of these women are actually domestic workers. So this informality comes with its own crisis that we already mentioned, that you cannot go to work because you're supposed to stay at home. But staying at home, you don't have the capability to do home office there. You don't even have internet, you know? You have to actually go out and do your work, but now you don't have the capability to do it because you will be exposed to, well, to getting sick, or plain you are not allowed to. So this only brings more poverty, insecurity. And actually, United Nations has stated over and over again that women are more vulnerable to be poor and to be in a poverty situation than men. If you could move on to the next slide, Irlanda, please. Another impact I mentioned is for the non-remunerated domestic workers, because the non-remunerated domestic workers are the ones that are supposed to stay at home and taking care of sick people. In here, of course, we're talking about the mothers, usually the ones that do the home in the work in the house, the ones do the dishes, the ones that clean the house, the ones that do the laundry, the ones that take care of the kids, that take care of the grandparents, take care of the sick people. The schools are closed, so you have to work of some sorts. You have to get money, you have to be productive, and you have to take care of the kids. You have to school them, and you also don't have access to basic goods, because in some countries food is scarce and you don't have access to water sometimes. So on top of all of this, you also have to be a perfect wife, and you have to be a perfect lover. Oops. Did you hear that? I'm sorry. So you have to be a perfect wife, perfect mother, perfect everything. And you create this personification of perfection that women in Latin America or in any part of the world are in the possibility of achieving, because exactly, a superwoman. And you know, superwoman doesn't exist. We are women and we are incredible, but we don't have to take this burden on our backs. And then, of course, as victims of gender violence, which is the most pungent one, there are a great deal of domestic abuses, and we will see some statistics in a minute. But we have to understand that lockdown is not the same for everyone. Being trapped with your aggressor and not having the time, don't having the opportunity to leave your house and escape that even for a little bit, it's dangerous. It's dangerous, it's troublesome, and it's actually very, very scary. There is a lack of access to the sexual and reproductive services because now the state, it's not focusing on this part of attending women. Now the state has its focus on something else, on getting the economic moving, on getting the health services back in track, you know? And, oops, I'm sorry. And yeah, health and support services are overshot by the emergency, so which is basically the same. If you could move to the next slide, Irlanda, please. And well, in here, as I said, in here are some of the statistics that are very related particularly to gender violence. The calls to 911, which is the emergency line. In some countries, they are different, but it's basically the emergency line to put a formal complaint on the violence. Increased 91% in Colombia, 36% in Mexico, and 25% in Argentina. However, regionally, absolutely in every country, they have increased between 13% and 100%, depending on the country. Of course, we can realize here, this is a total overshot of the services. And in countries such as Mexico, there is actually been a shortage of funding. Like, the government is not giving enough money to attend this cult and to have refuge for the women that tend to place aside for home to be taken care of. I don't know if I'm explaining myself right with this. Hopefully I am. Well, then we move on to femicide. Some studies say that femicide, it's not on the rise, but according to statistics, it is actually in Mexico, Dominican Republic, Venezuela, Chile, and Nicaragua. And when you have statements with your government that say that sometimes femicide, well, it's just a collateral damage, you understand that this is not the focus of the government. And it is very important, and I already talked a lot about femicide earlier. It's the maximum expression of violence against women, and it's something that has to be addressed. And it continues on the rise in quarantine because women haven't stopped dying, women haven't stopped being murdered. And of course, violence. We have to address that. Well, regionally, 20 million women and girls have been victims of any type of violence, particularly physical violence within the life. And also the formal reports, they decreased 18% in April. But why did formal reports decrease? Well, because they don't have access to reporting these crimes. So when you restrict mobility, you don't have access to go to the services that it's supposed to protect you, because you don't have to wait to contact them in your own house a lot of the times, because your husband's watching you, because you don't have access to a phone, and because you're pretty much trapped. So I hope that this put a light on the different situations we live. And also I would like to address that we are in a place of a lot of privilege. We are talking about this, and maybe a lot of us are not suffering these types of violence and these types of dimensions, but we do have to understand them. Next slide, please, and it will be the end of my participation. And well, lockdown results in many things that we already mentioned, and I would like to just, yeah, they don't invest in data. That is so important. They don't invest in data because it showcases the magnitude of the situation. That is so important. I completely agree with that. Lockdown results in high levels of stress. It results in unemployment. It results in the virtual media being another tool to victimize and to violate you. It results in the precarization of work conditions because you don't have a place to go to work, or the actual place you go, now it's worse than it was. There is lack of essential services for vulnerable groups, such as migrants, South-South Indigenous people, Afro-descendants, and the members of the LGBTQ+ community. There is a paralyzed justice system that it's not attending you because it's also quarantining. So the justice is in quarantine as well. There is a lack of access to basic health and reproductive rights and services, and there are limitations to social society to help you. And these are just some of the results. And hopefully this helps bring a light on the many different problematics. And we will continue with, I think, Azalia or Irlanda, I think. Irlanda, right? We will continue, and thank you so much. And let's keep learning about this topic.
Well, hello, I'm Irlanda, and now we exposed all the problems and the emergency status on Latin America, but we search for solutions too. So, what is the government doing faced with this emergency? Well, not much, because I'm going to mention what are the measures or the lack of them that the governments of some Latin American countries are implementing. As well, I'm going to mention the results if they exist. So I will start with Mexico. That is the country where we live and is the information that we have in first hand. So faced with the alarming figures already mentioned above, especially the increase in calls for the 911, the Mexican government have the great idea to launch a campaign where the main message was cuenta hasta 10. That means count to 10. Messages like and breathe and messages like breathe and calm down and then count to 10. They were absurd. And the commercials, you can see a woman that is exercising violence against her family, and that not only meant that the invisibility of domestic abuse against women, it also meant the lack of interest of for by the government to solving their problem, because the government put the problem like it was an individual problem, and that's clearly not the case. There is a structure that is making the problem. It's not just a solution for individual persons. So that was one of the solutions that obviously didn't work, and it was absurd, so they put it away. And hopefully we do not see that commercials anymore. So again, Leslie mentioned the austerity, the budget austerity. It was like cuts for budgets in organizations and institutions of the government. So um, that was made without a human rights or gender perspective. And that caused that these institutions and organizations that provided support for victims of violence to weaken. These cuts represent a large reduction on support that were, that these organizations were made. So the remediable measures that are found, that I found, were in manuals for the case of victims of violence during confinement. However, not all the states has these kind of manuals. Actually, only one state on all the country have one. So these are not like, well, the crisis the crisis continues and even increased. So this is not working. Now I'm going to move to the south of the continent to talk about Argentina, where Leslie already said the complaints of gender violence increased by 26% during the quarantine. So this caused 19 femicides were registered by the months of the confinement. So the UN calls this crisis the violence, the other pandemic. So together with the European Union, the UN decided to collaborate with an initiative that is called Spotlight Initiative, and that is a global alliance of the European Union and the United Nations to eradicate all forms of violence against women and girls. And this works on some countries of Latin America, especially in Argentina. But this all sounds very good. This is great, but unfortunately, there are no published results for the institutions that operate this initiative, and it started last year, so we're still not having results. And it is said that the Argentine government is supporting to obtain a strengthening of the services, and yeah, they are trying to make stronger these services that help the victims of abuse. And now we're going to move some to the north, to Peru, that I'm going to say, oh, I forgot to change the slide, I'm sorry. Oh my God. Well, however, now Peru, it has 60% of feminicides occurring in the home. This is according to the Crime Observatory of the Ministry of Peru, and the counseling, information, and emotional support service on issues of family violence and sexual abuse receives around 8,000 calls 33 days after the contingency status was decreed. So it was estimated that the call had an increase for 43%. Facing this, the government was, well, there was a legislative decree that was approved in that establishes measures to guarantee the care and protection of victims of violence against women and members of the family group during it was especially for the COVID situation. But again, no favorable results are presented for these initiatives because feminicides continue and rape cases in Peru increased after 8 weeks of confinement. So these are very sad to read because the government is taking action, but the actions that are being taken are not working. So what does that mean for Latin America and El Caribe? Well, the UN decided to react and compiled information documents to prevent and respond toward violence against women. This specifically for the COVID pandemic, and uh, these documents offered strategies and recommendations to carry out these actions. But again, you say, oh, qué terca eres. Pero again, this doesn't work. These documents are not being, are not, these documents are not giving the necessary promotion for every woman that needs it, have it. I don't know if that makes sense. Well, not every girl and every woman that is in danger have the knowledge that this document exists. And the UN, personally, I didn't see any kind of promotion for these documents. So this is not the solution for, I mean, it's okay to make these initiatives, but they are not working. So that is a little bit of the measures that are being taken for this pandemic situation, this double pandemic. Now we're going to Azalia that is going to talk about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenda. Hi, everyone. I'm Asalia, and I'm so excited to be here. I'm glad to learn a lot of Edinburgh from my kids and all women that are participating. Of course, to you to be here. And first of all, I always say it, that English is my second language. So if you don't understand something, or maybe I say something in Spanish, you'll let me know in the chat, and I can repeat it again. Okay. My friend said a few minutes ago about how is the situation in Latin America and what is the government doing about it. But what is, what have been, what have the feminist groups been doing? I'm Mexican, but as well as Mexico is part of Latin America, I want to talk about other places or countries that they belong to. So they will be Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, and Argentina. You can see them on the map. And so what have the women movement been doing during this quarantine? I'm gonna talk about specific cases, starting with Mexico in the next slide, please. In my country and our country as well places around the world, the femicides start to grow up when the quarantine began. Also, the social inequality was more visible than before. Imagine what is now, how is it now, if before the quarantine the inequality was awful. So to begin, I want to talk about a case that is not gender violence, but is related to social inequality. In May 4, 2 months after the quarantine began in Mexico, cops in Guadalajara City murdered Giovanni Lopez. He was 30 years old and he was a builder. The reason of why he was killed by cops? Because he was not using a mask on the street. And with the inequality in the country, you can see a worker being murdered on the street by cops, and on the other side, you can see people with better economic traveling on the street or making parties, and nothing happens. On social media, people use the hashtag Justicia para Giovanni, Justice for Giovanni, and even in a pandemic, collectives show up in front of the government bill of their city asking for justice. Also, the gender violence is made by the government. As Irlanda said a few minutes ago, like 3 weeks ago, the Mexican government want to reduce the budget on Mujeres, el Instituto Nacional de las Mujeres. That is a federal government entity that coordinates the national policy on substantive equality and contributes to the eradication of gender violence against women. They wanted to release it when in Mexico, the femicides are 10 women by 4 protesting social media using the hashtag no al recorte presupuestario. Also, a few days ago, groups protested drawing a pink big cross that you can see them in the slide. As a protest against the government bill for all women that are not here anymore. This is one of all multiple ways to ask for justice when we are living in a lockdown. This is the reality of Mexico, and this is the reality of a lot of places in Latin America and around the world. In the next slide, in Colombia, as Mexico, has a lot of protests. What is the reason about that? In Cali, a city in Colombia, increased femicides by 400% in just a city, in Cali. Women raised their voices and took the places, so they are against the government, which had never protected them. The photo that you can see it was a performance for taking attention of the Congress and the mayor of Cali. They were heard, and those are the agreement between the Congress and the women. The first one is the investigation of the violence that they suffer. The second one is keep and increase the searching for missing women in the city and the country. And the last one is a gender perspective in the political agenda. So you can see that this protest, in a lot of time, it can work. In the next slide, in Argentina, it's almost the same case that in all Latin America. They are still looking for justice for missing girls. In fact, in a collective called Mumala, Mujer de la Matria Latinoamérica, keep working for getting justice, and they got it 2 years later when the murderer got a penal servitude for life for committed a femicide against Rosalia Jara. Also, I saw, and I want to talk about it, how they organize themselves for made online protests. The Pañolazo Verde online, like this, like they represents a political posture from human rights, legal abortion specifically. And they made different activities to remember about the fight to legal abortion that was declined 2 years ago in all Argentina. We can say we are using social media against the gender violence. The next slide, please. Well, we can say that we are using social media against the gender violence, right? The social media is a useful tool when we want to speak up. Around the Latin America, the movement was moved to internet. I see good examples in the last slides. The hashtag are essential. Also, I see in Ecuador, as other places, women use social media not only to speak of, yet also they discover a wonderful way to offer help to other women who live with their aggressor, and they cannot run from them. They create La Canasta Roja, the red basket, is a code to ask help if your life is in danger and you can run. It's mostly used for women who lives in violence. So you can send a message asking for the canasta roja, like if you want to buy it on WhatsApp, Facebook, and any chat, and give them your address to the collective feminist groups, the women in general, and they will gonna help you sending the cops at your house, or maybe send a message to your family. Are a lot of ways to still fighting. This problematic in quarantine are good. All of them are good, but those are some of just specific cases, as I said. This is happening in all countries in Latin America, and it worked like in a few cases that I mentioned, like in Colombia, in Argentina too. Maybe many times it didn't work, but it's necessary to keep fighting, not just in Latin America, in the whole world about it. So we must continue with my wonderful friend Isis. Muchas gracias por estar aquí. Thank you so much for being here. Isis, please.
Now, thank you so much for all of your words. I'm sorry for my dog, it's like crazy. And I will continue with the part, what can I do? Maybe you will wonder at this point of this presentation, like, okay, you are presenting me the data, it's a really hard data. I was listening to it and I was really shocked, and I live here, and every single day it's really hard for me to continue like know what happened and what is happening. And now as a member of this club and as an officer with all of my amazing friends, we were like forming part of feminist groups and every single that by asking ourselves like, what can I do to solve this? Because it's a really hard problem that maybe we are talking about Latin America, we are talking about our experience, but you can also be part of it, maybe a little, maybe a lot. So today we will talk about that in this part, how you can get involved. In the next slide, please. Now we have these points like call to actions, like show leadership in your group, maybe in your house, in your street, in your school, university, college, or even in your work, you have to show leadership from the people that are around you, because we know as a woman, as girls, it's really hard for us to be part or to feel connected, because most of these places are more like focused on men or focused in a specific kind of person. So it's really hard for us to fit. So show leadership. You can do it because you are meant to be there and you are worried. So the next point is creative equality. Now, for example, we are here as officers of Guerrilla Políticas UANL, and we try the most we can to create all of the for our girls, for our members. So we change the norms. We try the most we can to create a path when everyone can feel safe. As early in this presentation, one girl from Colombia said, like, in my country also happened something like that. They with a machete, they hit a man. So we are trying with new norms, with a new reality. We are trying to make our people or members safe. So the fourth point is change your perception. You may wonder, like, okay, Isis. My name is Isis, by the way. I'm sorry if I didn't introduce myself. I also forgot that part. I'm sorry. You may wonder, Isis, okay, these points are really cute, but like in a reality, what do? Well, you go to a place, you march. I don't know if it's the right word, and you go with the people, as we said in the beginning, like the 8th of May or March, I don't remember. Uh, we march for our women. We march for the Women's Day. But also, you may wonder, like, okay, good, but we are during the lockdown. We cannot go out. We cannot take the street today, but maybe tomorrow we will do it, and that's incredible, because today we can't. We can't take the street now, but when this lockdown is over, we will take the street and we will ask and fight in person for our rights. We will, I promise to you. But during this lockdown, you also can do it by being in your house. Of course, but every single piece of thing you are doing is helping for a change. So take the internet over. In the next slide, I will tell you like some recommendations that we did as a club with other feminist groups, but in a other subject. The next slide, please. My beautiful Ireland. So we created tangible actions online. As I said, today we can't take the streets, but tomorrow, when this lockdown is over, we will, and we'll fight for our rights. As women, as girls, we own it. We are here to take it. What is us? What is rightfully us? So I'm telling you like some action you can do. The first one, use hashtag. This amazing social media can work also for actions to represent something, as we said, as we saw from the Black Lives Matter movement. That was really shocking. I like how the whole internet for a lot of places connected, so we can connect also for this movement, for this feminist. So use hashtag. Gender violence is also a pandemic on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, or also in TikTok. Why not? Now TikTok is really famous, you can use it. And the next one is also ask your lawmakers, because they are the person that they need to represent us and they need to hear from us. So tag them in Instagram, in Twitter, in Facebook, or if they don't have any social media, send them an email and write a letter, write a like a statement and ask them, we are having violence against women. What are you doing to protect us? So the second point, I jump right away from the third point. I'm sorry. The second point is use your Instagram. Tag your local girl club if you have a local club, and also tag your lawmaker and ask them to give you an answer. Ask them to protect the girls and women from your country, from your local community. And the third point that I already jumped in that, send an email to the Human Rights Office where you live to ask them about the gender violence situation in this pandemic. I will talk about the next slide from some feminist groups that are here in Latin America. Also, this is really important, support feminist groups, because maybe you are like a girl, tell us like, I'm from India. Yes, and that was amazing because this activity that the girl from Edinburgh, I'm sorry if I said it wrong, is doing is really amazing because they are connecting a lot of clubs from a lot of part of the world, and it's really, really awesome. So of course, support feminist group, maybe your local feminist groups or a global. You never know. And I will tell you like some feminist groups. I have 3, but we have a lot. We have like a lot. Even in our locality, like in our city, we have like more than 30 feminist groups or more. I don't know. So I will tell you like 3 from 3 different countries. The first one from Mexico. I will say the names in Spanish. I'm sorry for that. The first one is Comando Colibri from Mexico. The second one is Flor de Azaela from Ecuador. And the third one, the last del Encuentro from Argentina. So these feminist groups, I'm sorry, are one of the many groups that are fighting every single day for the girls' women rights. So you can support them, ask them, what do you need? Do you need something? Do you need support on social media? May I reply your post, your story? Or oh yes, of course, I will write it in a minute, don't worry. And also support them like, may I reply your post, your story? You need like social promotion, or maybe if you can, in your possibilities, make a donation or make something. We have a lot of groups in any kind of like situation. Maybe if you are really interested in the indigenous areas or in the how I can tell it, like from the minor communities. So if you like feel really connected with a community, you can find a support. You can find a feminist group and support it, maybe with a donation, as I said, or maybe with promotion in your social media. So maybe you cannot do the donation, but any person that is in your social media can do it. So we never know. So thank you so much for listening to us, and my part is finished. I'm sorry if I speak like really quick. It's something I'm trying to change. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to ask Shira, do we have like 2 minutes? I know we already overstepped the time, but the topic is huge. The topic is huge. Everyone from Latin America, I think, can empathize with this. And there's a lot of countries, a lot of different realities, and we try to put it in a tiny presentation, right? So can we have like 2 minutes maybe to back and forth some questions? I'm asking this to Shira, just to confirm.
Yeah.
Or
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, thank you, Shira. Okay, so anyone has any questions? ¿Alguien tiene una pregunta? Si la quieren hacer en español también está súper bien. If you want to do it in Spanish, go for it.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to extend my appreciation for all you have shown today. nobody could have done it better than you guys did. Thank you for including all the different countries in Latin America. I also posted in the chat that we need to hold international NGOs and foundations accountable for their lack of international diversity. For example, Girl Up cannot claim that they're international and that they have clubs in all these countries when their leadership doesn't represent that. And we need to like keep, I know you guys know Bita, but Latin America is a huge region, and you just exposed like all these issues go further than just what one person can handle. So I just wanted to say that the teen advisor class for this year is working really hard to make the international community be more visible and overall be more accounted for in Girl Up. So, and it all starts with presentations like this. So thank you so much. You now have an ally in Medellín, in Colombia. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Salomé. Nos encantó todas verte aquí y nos encantó todas sus contribuciones en el chat. We love your contributions, and we totally empathize with that. The need to having more representation of Latin American women. And thank you for your work as a teen advisor. And you also have allies in Monterrey, México. Así que sigamos trabajando. Muchas gracias. ¿Alguien quiere leer alguna pregunta? Does anyone want to read any questions? Okay, so I will.
Mena is telling us that the lack of internet access among low-income women is an important factor also. And it is because as women, if you live like in some kind of community, it may be really hard for access to the internet. So I completely understand what you're saying. I don't know if anyone else wants to point something.
Yeah, I also think the same thing. Like right now, maybe with schools, this strategy to have schools at home. Not everyone has the opportunity to use a computer in their own home. Not everyone has access to internet. Maybe there's only and keeping your education another step back because you are not giving these opportunities and there are not transversal strategies. And I don't know, maybe we can have maybe one more question or one more comment. If anyone would like to open their mics, we would love to hear you. No, are we good? Okay, that's good. Thank you so much for everyone who commented, for everyone who made a question. I would just like to make like a short goodbye. Irlanda, si puedes poner la última slide, please. The conversation in the chat was amazing. The conversation among us, I hope it was useful for everyone. Just as a quick goodbye, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, Girl Up, Edinburgh, Shira, Mariana, to open the spaces. It's amazing what you guys are doing. And also, I think it's important that for us to realize that the solution has to be with the women that are the most affected in the center and listening to them and listening to us. Let's take up the spaces, let's participate, and let's keep pushing for better and substantial changes. That's it for me. Girls, if you want to say goodbye.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Bye-bye, everybody.